This season, we've given you a void weapon build, a balanced strand build, and even 2 arc builds. Well, it's finally time. In this video, we're bringing an updated solar build that gives you good healing, amazing ad clear, and weapon damage, and even massive DPS for boss phases under the right conditions. That's right, we're bringing you the Titan Pyrogale build. This season brought the new Titan exotic, the Pyrogale gauntlets, and man, do I love them. They turn your Burning Maul super into one massive slam that sends out cyclones of solar energy to do damage to any target in its path. The beauty of this comes from the ability to have a one and done solar super on Titans. I've always loved my solar Titan builds, but I've always been hesitant to use the solar Titans since I want to use my super on the boss, but roaming supers haven't been able to keep up with DPS for damage rotations. And to be honest, they shouldn't be able to. And that's where this new exotic comes in. For Titans, we only had one super that was a one and done super, and that was the Arc Thunder Crash. So in any boss phases, you basically had to be using this to keep up. Now that we have another option, we have even more builds on backup for boss phases. To be clear, there are advantages and disadvantages to using Thunder Crash or Burning Maul, but we'll get into that later. Remember to leave a like if you found this video helpful, and if you like seeing build videos and other Destiny 2 helpful content, consider hitting the subscribe button. With that being said, let's jump right on into it. For this build, we're using the Solar subclass, and 2 main reasons for that. We get damage buffs and healing. With the Solar subclass, we can make ourselves Radiant, giving us an on-demand 25% weapon damage buff, and we then pair this with massive orb creation to get an additional 22% stacking weapon damage, meaning our weapons can easily be putting out 53% extra damage on a regular basis. And the other reason is because Solar has access to the best survivability in the game. Solar offers us many ways to give ourselves restoration and cure, and for this build, we're going to be using our weapons to extend that restoration. Alright, let's take a look at the super and the abilities. First up, our super. Since this build is using the Pyrogales, we're gonna be using Burning Maul. The Pyrogales make this super now one of the best options for boss DPS. When comparing to our only other option, Thunder Crash, that has Cures of the Falling Star, Burning Maul comes out on top in terms of total damage, but there are some kickbacks. First up, you need to make sure the boss can even be hit by this super. Since it travels on the ground, nearly all flying or hovering bosses such as witches and shriekers are out of the question. Also, if the boss moves around a lot or has a small hitbox, your damage will be inconsistent. But if you do have a boss that this super will work on, you can output some mad damage. I did some damage testing myself and got 584,000 once, and on the other test I got 563,000, which does line up with the damage testing sheet made by Aegis, where they have 574,000. In comparison, T-Crash only did 419,000 in my test, and they have it listed as 457,000 in theirs. This really starts to become amplified when you incorporate a weaken effect like Tractor or Tether, making your Burning Maul capable of doing around 200,000 more damage than T-Crash. In terms of actual DPS, technically T-Crash is better because all the damage happens nearly instantly, whereas Burning Maul leaves behind cyclones that do continuous damage. So make sure you're using this super at the beginning of boss damage phases. I've also seen that you can hot swap to Synthoceps for more damage, but this is very niche, and I'm not sure if it got patched, so I won't be touching on that. Keep in mind that while I am recommending this build, this should be one of many builds that you have in your arsenal. This isn't the one-all be-all build that you'll always use. The beauty of Destiny comes from being able to swap to certain builds to fit the situation and environment that you're in. If you're going for purely the highest damage for your whole team, then you need to make sure that you're taking advantage of all of your buffs and debuffs. Things like Jolt, Unravel, Weaken, Radiant are all important for giving your team the most amount of damage possible. Alright, moving on to the abilities. First up, I'm taking Rally Barricade. This has a shorter cooldown, and it does give us a little bit extra reload speed when we are behind it. I'm also taking Throwing Hammer. Picking it up refreshes our melee and gives us Cure. Bong Titan is just too powerful to not be using with this build. For a grenade, you can take Healing Grenade or Solar Grenade. It kind of depends on the content you're doing. In harder content, Healing Grenade. But in easier content, Solar Grenade for the extra damage. Though, if you have a Solar Warlock on your team, don't throw your grenade at the boss when theirs is up. You might be stealing their damage, which they can output more damage with their grenades. Alright, moving on to the aspects. First up, Roaring Flames. This increases our solar ability damage and stacks up to 3 times. We're mainly going to be using this to power up our super, but it's also nice for when we are using our hammer or a grenade. I'm also taking Soul Invictus with this. This creates sunspots on ability final blows, or defeating scorched targets. These sunspots are not only going to scorch enemies and deal damage, but also our abilities are going to recharge faster and it's going to give us restoration. Alright, moving on to our fragments. First up, we're going to take Ember of Torches, making our powered melee hits grant us Radiant. Since we are on Bong Titan, we should always basically have our hammer and basically always have Radiant up as well. The extra 25% weapon damage on a consistent basis is nice. We're also going to pair this with Ember of Empyrean, making our solar weapon or ability final blows extend the restoration and Radiant that we have. Remember, we can walk through a sunspot and immediately gain restoration. we can use our hammer to create that sunspot, which is going to give us radiant. So now we both have radiant and restoration. We get one more kill, and we're starting our process to extend it up to 12 seconds. We're also going to pair this with Ember of Searing, where when we defeat a scorched target, we're going to grant melee energy and create a fire sprite. This is super helpful if you do lose your hammer. All right, for our final fragment, there's two options. If you're going to use the solar grenade, I'm definitely recommending Ember of Ashes. You're going to apply more scorch stacks, and this goes for both your weapon if you have incandescent and any of your sunspots. But more importantly, for our solar grenade, it's going to output more damage to a boss or any other target that you're going to throw your grenade at. Sadly, it doesn't do anything for your super. I did test this, and I actually got more damage when I didn't have Ember of Ashes on, but I think that's more about the inconsistency of the super. All right, if you're using the healing grenade, I'm going to recommend Ember of Solace. This is going to give us a longer duration on our radiant and restoration, which is going to make it a little bit easier and have a little bit more wiggle room for when you do get those buffs. You now have extended time to get your next kill to continuously extend that cycle of restoration and radiant. All right, let's talk about ways to improve the build. First up, our stat mods. I'm going to be going for 100 resilience because honestly, we're a Titan. It's not only going to reduce our class ability, but also having that 30% extra damage resistant is always helpful. I'm also going to be shooting for 100 discipline. Since there isn't any other ability that's super important for this build, getting our grenade back is either going to allow us to have more healing or more damage output. We basically always will have our hammer, and getting back our super isn't like super necessary, so going for discipline is definitely our next option. After that, I would either go for recovery or intellect. All right, for our armor mods, first up for the helmet, I'm going to take hands-on, which means we're going to gain bonus super energy on melee kills. Again, this is a bonk build, so we do want to be throwing our hammer fairly often to get kills, so this is just going to get our super back a little bit quicker. I'm also going to take heavy ammo finder, which is going to increase the drop chance of heavy ammo. And who doesn't like more heavy ammo, especially when you're doing boss damage? If you have room for it, Harmonic Siphon is also a great option, making it so that rapid elemental kills are going to create orbs. We do want to take a solar primary weapon, so this will just generate more orbs for us and our team. All right, moving on to the arms. First up, heavy-handed. This means powered melee final blows are going to create orbs. Again, we are using our hammer a ton, so creating these orbs is not only going to give us more weapon damage, but it's also going to generate more orbs for our team. We're also going to pair this with impact induction, where when we cause damage with a powered melee, it's going to generate grenade energy. So now when we throw our hammer, we're going to create a sunspot if we get a kill, we're going to create an orb if we get a kill, and whenever we do cause that damage, it's going to give us back 20% grenade energy. It does have a 7-second cooldown, but getting back a fifth of our grenade on a hammer is easy. I do like to also pair this with momentum transfer, where when we cause damage with a grenade, it gives us more melee energy. But if you are using the healing grenade, you could swap this out for a harmonic loader. All right, moving on to the chest. I'm going to take 3 resistance mods, and I'm going to usually do one of each element: Arc, Void, and Solar. But it honestly depends on the content you're doing and if there are any threats. Mix and match accordingly. Alright, moving on to the legs. Since this is a boss DPS build, we are going to take 3 solar weapon surges, giving us a 22% weapon damage for our solar weapons. If I am using something like Wither Horde, sometimes I like to switch one of these out for a kinetic, so we can get 10% for our Wither Horde and 17% for our solar weapons. But it's absolutely not necessary. Alright, moving on to the mark. First up, I'm going to take Outreach. This makes it so when you use your class ability, you're going to gain melee energy back. It's around 12.5%. I like this for if I lose my hammer, I can pop my barricade and immediately start the process of getting my hammer back. And then I'm also going to pair this with time dilation, making our decaying armor charge last a little bit longer. This is mainly for our weapon surge. And finally, Powerful Attraction, where we pick up nearby orbs when we use our barricade. Since we don't use our barricade that much, you could swap this out for Font of Restoration if you don't have that much in the restoration stat. Alright, let's talk about the artifact for this season. We're going to take the classic mix that we have been for the past few builds. First up in column 3, we're going to take Elemental Orb Solar, so that when we get solar weapon kills, we're going to have a chance to create a solar elemental orb. In column 4, we want Elemental Fury, communal pickups, and refreshing pickups. This now makes it so elemental orbs deal more damage to stun champions. When our allies use an elemental orb, its cooldown is reduced by 5 seconds, and we get bonus solar weapon damage. Plus, when we pick up an elemental orb or tangle, we're granted ability energy to our least charge ability. In column 5, we want Monochromatic Maestro, so that we can use our weapons to buff our abilities and our abilities to buff our weapons. This is a 10% buff that lasts for 5 seconds. And then I'm also going to pair this with elemental munitions, making it so that kills with elemental orbs now have a chance to drop heavy ammo. Alright, let's talk about weapons that pair well with this build. Since it is a boss DPS build, we will be touching on that, but you can use this build if you are doing generic gunplay. So we will also be talking about great ad clearing options. First up in our kinetic slot, I like to choose a heavy hitter, or whatever's best for your activity. Succession and Heritage both roll with recombination and some sort of auto-loading holster. This is perfect since we can do one powerful shot and then switch back to our solar weapon to continue our radiant and restoration. Another set of great options are going to be the Riptide and Conditional Finality. Both are great options for taking out champs and doing high damage to individual targets. You could also take Izanagi's or Wither Horde, which are going to be perfect for raid-like boss phases or dungeons. Alright, now for the energy slot. We will want to take a solar weapon with Incandescent. Incandescent isn't necessary, but it definitely pairs perfectly with this build, since we can create sunspots whenever we're killing scorched targets. A few great options are going to be the Callus Mini Tool, Bug Out Bag, and No Survivors. These are all SMGs that come with Incandescent and do have some great options in the other perk slot. Some other great options for range could be the Amit AR2, the BXR55, or the Abyss Defiant. All have some god rolls that can also roll with Incandescent. If you have the exotic slot available, Polaris Lance, Skyburner's Oath, or Tommy's Matchbook are all great options, depending on the situation. Skyburner's Oath is going to do more damage to Cabal, and it's going to scorch targets. Tommy's Matchbook is also going to scorch targets, and both of these are going to help us get back our melee energy if we ever do lose our hammer. Polaris Lance is fantastic for range situations, so if you are staying a little bit further back, that is a great option. All right, moving on to our heavy. Again, we're going to want to take a solar weapon, since we are using Solar Weapon Surge. For our legendary options, we have Apex Predator, Cataclysmic, and Briars. They all can do fantastic DPS, but it kind of depends on whatever boss you're facing. Since rockets are pretty much still meta, Apex Predator is definitely your best option. For some ad clearing options, you do have Heir Apparent, Unwavering Duty, and Avalanche. All these machine guns can absolutely decimate the field and are exceptional ad clearing weapons when you're running most activities. Some niche exotics that you can use are going to be the Parasite, Sleeper, and Galley. Galley is obviously going to help buff all the rockets on your team, but there only needs to be one, so if another teammate's running it, obviously don't run it. Sleeper can actually put out some mad damage, but it again depends on the boss that you're facing. I've been using Sleeper on Iriute, and I've been able to one-phase her with a few different teams. I was also running Parasite when I was doing some recording for this video, and oh my gosh, it does so much damage. There's so many times that when you're running regular content, you can easily get up to 20 kills by yourself and then do one pop shot at some boss, and if it's normal content, you're either almost gonna kill it or do a massive amount of damage. You pair this with your incredible super, and you can obliterate the boss in a matter of seconds. This build offers some of the most versatility when it comes to a Titan build. It offers the most damage output from a one and done super for boss phases. It offers massive survivability from restoration. It offers improved weapon damage from radiant and weapon surges. Plus, it offers great ad clearing options with both our weapons and our abilities. I'll definitely still have a Thunder Crash build in my back pocket for certain bosses, but this is going to definitely be my go-to build for most raid and dungeons, or any other bosses that need to be taken out very quickly. Let me know your thoughts of the build. What would you change or how would you improve it? If you like this video and want to see more helpful content like this, smash that like button and subscribe. That's it for me. Peace out.